The room was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft murmur of conversations. It was supposed to be a celebration, my promotion, a night to remember. But as I glanced around, I caught sight of Jennifer leaning a little too close to Mark, our mutual friend, their laughter sounding more intimate than friendly. A cold wave of realization washed over me, the kind that chills you to the bone. My heart raced as I pieced it together. They were more than friends. I spent the rest of the evening trying to shake off the feeling, but it clung to me like a shadow. I could see them exchanging glances, her hand brushing against his arm in a way that felt far too familiar. I could almost feel the betrayal wrapping around me, tightening its grip with every laugh that escaped her lips. By the end of the night, the illusion of happiness had shattered completely, and I knew I had to do something. In the days that followed, the anger simmered just beneath the surface. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this was not just about betrayal, it was about humiliation. How dare they mock what we had built? They would pay for this, I told myself. I started to plan. The idea of a grand event came to me suddenly, something that would draw our friends together, a perfect backdrop for the ultimate reveal. I would host a celebration that would become a night they would never forget. I enlisted a few close friends who had sensed the tension but were oblivious to the truth. They were excited, eager to help me organize what they thought would be a joyful gathering. Little did they know, it was a setup. I crafted the video meticulously, compiling clips of Jennifer and Mark together, snippets from parties, vacations, and moments that would leave no doubt about their affair. I chose the right music, something haunting that would linger in the air. As I worked, the adrenaline surged through me. This was my moment, the moment I would take back my power. On the night of the event, I watched as guests arrived, smiles painted on their faces. I greeted everyone warmly, making small talk while my heart thudded against my chest. Jennifer was radiant, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. I could see her confidence, the way she held herself, and it fueled my resolve. As the evening progressed, drinks flowed and laughter echoed, but the tension in the air was palpable. I gathered everyone around for the big announcement, a casual line that would lead into my carefully orchestrated reveal. I could feel the anticipation build as I introduced the video. The screen lit up, and silence fell over the crowd. My heart raced as the first images flashed, a snapshot of happiness that twisted into something darker. I watched Jennifer's face go pale as the realization dawned on her, and then came the sound of gasps from the crowd. The once cheerful atmosphere shattered, replaced by shock and disbelief. When the video ended, the silence was deafening. I stood there, taking in the scene, Jennifer's horror, Mark's shame, the faces of our friends contorted in surprise. It was a moment frozen in time, the ultimate reckoning. I had done it, I had exposed them, and they stood before me, stripped of their masks. The aftermath was chaos. Jennifer tried to defend herself, to weave her excuses, but her words fell flat in the face of overwhelming evidence. Friends began to distance themselves, casting wary glances. Mark, usually so confident, now stumbled over his words, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. I felt a mix of satisfaction and sorrow wash over me. I had exacted my revenge, yet the cost of this victory weighed heavily. I had lost not just a wife but a piece of myself in the process. As I watched them crumble, a part of me wondered if this was truly worth it. But in that moment, surrounded by the echoes of betrayal, I knew I had made my choice. The night would be theirs to remember, but for entirely different reasons than intended. In the aftermath of the revelation, the air was thick with tension. Friends who once shared laughter now stood divided, whispering in hushed tones. I felt a rush of triumph, yet it was tinged with an unsettling emptiness. Jennifer's face, once so familiar, was now filled with disbelief and anger. I had shattered the image of the perfect life we had built together, and I couldn't decide if I felt regret or relief. As guests trickled out, their expressions ranged from shock to pity, some avoiding my gaze altogether. Mark slipped away early, unable to face the fallout. Jennifer, however, remained, her fury palpable. I could feel her eyes drilling into me, each glance filled with a mix of betrayal and resentment. "Why would you do this?" She spat, her voice shaking with indignation. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." "Humiliated?" I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You did that to yourself. You chose to betray me with someone I considered a friend." She scoffed, her anger morphing into desperation. "You could have confronted me privately. This was unnecessary." I shook my head, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "And let you continue lying to my face? This was the only way to show you the truth." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as she struggled to process her emotions, anger, shame, and something deeper that I couldn't quite place. For a moment, we were two strangers, lost in the wreckage of our relationship. "Do you even care about what this does to us?" she finally asked, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "To our life? To everything we built?" Her question hung in the air, and I felt a pang of doubt. "What about what you did to us? You tore it all apart." "I made a mistake," she admitted, her voice breaking. "A terrible mistake. But this, you're ruining any chance we had to fix it." "Fix it?" I echoed, incredulity washing over me. "You think we can just pretend this never happened? You have no idea what it feels like to find out your wife is cheating on you." Jennifer's expression shifted, and I saw the flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to explain, to talk." I could feel the walls I had built around my heart begin to crack. "And what would that change? You've already made your choices. We can't undo the past, but we can choose how we move forward," she implored. "I'm still here, aren't I? I didn't run away like Mark." The mention of Mark made my blood boil again. I wanted to scream, to unleash all my pain and betrayal, but I held back. Instead, I took a deep breath, trying to weigh her words. "Why should I believe anything you say? How do I know you're not just saying this to save face?" "Because I care about you," she replied, her voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what I was thinking. It was a mistake I regret every single day." I looked away, feeling the conflict inside me. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of all the times she had betrayed my trust. But another part, the part that still loved her despite everything, wanted to listen. "What do you want?" I finally asked, my voice low. "What do you think we can do now?" "I want to start over," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I want to be honest. I want us to talk through this. No more secrets, no more lies. Just us, trying to find a way back." The sincerity in her voice tugged at my heart. I wanted to scream that it was too late, that the damage was irreparable, but deep down, a flicker of hope ignited, a desire for closure, for some semblance of understanding. "Okay," I said slowly. "Let's talk. But understand this, trust takes time to rebuild, and you've shattered it. I can't promise anything." She nodded, a mixture of relief and sadness washing over her face. "That's all I ask. Just give me a chance to show you I can be different." As we sat down on the edge of the couch, the weight of the world hung between us. We were two broken souls, grappling with our own mistakes and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. But for the first time since the night of the reveal, I felt a glimmer of something. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was the ultimate desire to delve into the depths of our shattered relationship. Only time would tell if it was enough to piece us back together. The days that followed were a blur of emotions, anger, confusion, and the faintest glimmer of hope. Jennifer and I had agreed to talk, but those conversations were often fraught with tension. Every time we sat down together, I felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest, suffocating any desire for reconciliation. Yet, amidst the chaos, there were moments of clarity, moments that reminded me of the love we once shared. One evening, we found ourselves sitting across from each other at the dining table, the remnants of an untouched meal cooling between us. I could see the effort Jennifer was putting into maintaining eye contact, her voice steady as she spoke. "I want to start from the beginning, Steve. I want to explain how I ended up here." "Go on," I said, my tone guarded. I had heard variations of this story before, but something in her demeanor made me willing to listen. "I felt like I was losing myself," she began, her voice wavering. "With work, with everything. I was overwhelmed. And then Mark was there, offering support. I know it sounds like an excuse, but I thought I was just being friendly. I never intended for it to go that far." "You think being friendly gives you a free pass to betray your husband?" I shot back, my anger flaring. "You chose to cross that line. You could have come to me instead." I know, I should have. But I was scared, Steve. I didn't want to burden you with my struggles, she replied, her eyes brimming with tears. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. Her vulnerability tugged at something deep inside me, a part of me that remembered how fiercely I loved her. What do you want from me, Jennifer? An apology? A second chance? I want you to see that I'm still the person you fell in love with, she said earnestly. I want to rebuild our trust. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. As I listened to her, I felt a flicker of the hope I'd buried deep. But hope was a dangerous thing, especially after what had happened. You realize it's going to take time, right? Trust doesn't just come back because you want it to. I understand, she nodded, determination etched across her face. I'm ready to put in the work. I'll show you that I can be better. That I am better. Days turned into weeks, and we fell into a tentative routine. We began spending evenings together, navigating the choppy waters of our relationship. I found myself sharing my feelings, fears, and memories, moments I had once cherished. It was cathartic yet terrifying, and sometimes I felt like I was walking a tightrope. One Friday night, we decided to revisit one of our favorite spots, a small cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The familiar aroma of coffee and pastries wafted through the air, wrapping around us like a warm embrace. As we sat across from each other, I noticed how she seemed to take in every detail. The way the light danced off the walls, the soft hum of conversations around us. For a moment, I saw a glimmer of the woman I had fallen in love with. This place used to mean so much to us, she said softly, her eyes wandering around the cafe. Remember our first date? How nervous we were. I smiled, memories flooding back. Yeah, and you spilled coffee all over your dress. You were so embarrassed, but it just made you even more beautiful. She laughed lightly, the sound bringing warmth to my heart. I never forgot that day. It was when I knew I wanted to be with you. In that moment, it felt like a fragile thread of connection was weaving back together. We talked about everything, the past, the present, and what we hoped for in the future. I found myself sharing more than I intended, and the walls I had built began to crumble, piece by piece. But just as I was beginning to let my guard down, the memories of her betrayal resurfaced, and the hurt twisted in my gut. I could feel the darkness creeping back, reminding me that the path to healing was not linear. Trust, once broken, was a delicate thing. Do you think we can really get back what we lost? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I believe we can, she replied, her gaze steady. It won't be easy, but I'm willing to fight for us. I know I've hurt you, and I will never stop regretting that. But if you give me the chance, I want to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve. Her words resonated within me, a flicker of hope igniting again. But I knew that hope was only the first step. The road ahead would be long and uncertain. As we finished our coffee, I realized that rebuilding trust would require vulnerability from both of us. I took a deep breath, ready to step into the unknown, hoping that together we could forge a new path forward. The weeks turned into months, and I found myself navigating a strange new reality. Jennifer was trying, really trying, to show me she was committed to rebuilding our relationship. We spent more time together, and I made a conscious effort to engage with her on deeper levels. Yet every moment of connection was laced with the shadows of our past. One evening, we sat on the couch, a stack of old photo albums spread out before us. As I flipped through the pages, memories washed over me, vacations, anniversaries, mundane moments that felt monumental at the time. Jennifer leaned closer, her shoulder brushing against mine. Look at us, she said softly, pointing to a photo from our honeymoon. We were beaming, radiating happiness. We were so in love. Yeah, we were, I replied, a knot forming in my stomach. It was bittersweet to reminisce. Each smile in the pictures felt like a reminder of what we had lost. Jennifer paused, her fingers tracing the edge of the photo. I want to feel that way again. I want us to be happy like that. I wanted that too, but it felt so far out of reach. It's going to take time, I said carefully. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. I know, she nodded, her expression serious. I'm willing to wait. I'll do whatever it takes to show you I'm committed to us. As the conversation deepened, I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but the memory of her betrayal lingered. It was like a ghost haunting every interaction, making it hard for me to fully embrace this new phase of our relationship. A few days later, Jennifer suggested we attend a couples retreat, a weekend getaway aimed at helping couples reconnect. At first, I hesitated. The thought of sharing our struggles with strangers felt daunting. But as I considered it, I realized this could be a step forward. "Fine, let's give it a shot," I said, surprising myself. The retreat was held at a picturesque lodge nestled in the mountains. As we arrived, I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. The setting was beautiful, yet it felt surreal to be there, considering everything that had happened. The first session began with icebreakers, and I couldn't help but feel out of place. Couples around us were laughing, sharing lighthearted stories, while we sat in a silence heavy with our unspoken past. Jennifer, however, was engaging with the group, her laughter ringing out, and I admired her ability to connect. As the facilitator guided us through various exercises, I found myself slowly opening up. We shared our thoughts on communication, our desires, and the obstacles we faced. "Trust is fragile," I said during one session. "It takes time to rebuild, and I don't know how to let go of the hurt." Jennifer's gaze was steady. "I understand. I don't expect you to forget. I just want a chance to prove that I can be the partner you deserve. I know I need to earn back your trust." As we went through the exercises, I could see how much effort she was putting in. We spent hours discussing our feelings, and for the first time, I felt like we were working together, not just as a couple trying to heal, but as a team striving for something greater. One evening, after a particularly intense session, we found ourselves sitting on the porch, the sun setting in hues of orange and pink. "This is beautiful," Jennifer said, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. "It is," I replied, my heart feeling lighter. "I'm glad we decided to come." "Me too," she smiled, and in that moment, I saw a glimpse of the future we could have. But just as quickly, doubt crept in. What if this was just a temporary high? What if, once we returned home, the shadows would return, heavier than before? "Do you think we can really make it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I believe we can," she said, her tone unwavering. "But it's not just about us wanting it. It's about the work we're willing to put in together." That night, we talked for hours, sharing our dreams and fears, peeling back layers that had long been buried. The connection between us felt genuine, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it was a fragile thread. As I drifted off to sleep, I held on to that thread, hoping it would lead us to a stronger bond. The next morning, we participated in a trust-building exercise that involved one partner blindfolded while the other guided them through a simple obstacle course. As I stood there, watching Jennifer blindfolded, I felt a surge of protectiveness. It was a metaphor for our relationship, the need for trust and guidance. I guided her carefully, my heart racing as she relied on my voice to navigate. When she reached the finish line, her face lit up with excitement. "I did it. I really did it," she exclaimed, removing the blindfold. "Yes, you did," I said, pride swelling in my chest. "But we did it together." As we wrapped up the retreat, I felt a shift within me. The experience had been enlightening, a step toward healing, but I knew the journey was far from over. Returning home, I felt the weight of uncertainty, yet a flicker of hope lingered. Perhaps we were beginning to find our way back to each other after all. Returning home from the retreat felt surreal. The familiar surroundings of our house, once a sanctuary, now felt heavy with unspoken words and lingering doubts. As we unpacked, I glanced at Jennifer, who seemed to radiate a renewed energy. She was eager to maintain the momentum we had built over the weekend, but I still felt the weight of our past pressing down on me. That evening, she suggested we create a relationship vision board. The idea was to visualize our goals, dreams, and commitments moving forward. I was skeptical at first, unsure how gluing pictures to a board could change anything. But I nodded, wanting to support her enthusiasm. We spread out magazines on the dining table, the colorful pages fluttering under the soft light. As Jennifer flipped through them, I felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. She cut out images and words that resonated with her, arranging them carefully. I couldn't help but admire her determination. "Here," she said, handing me a picture of a couple hiking in the mountains. "This represents adventure. I want us to explore more together." I smiled, feeling a flicker of warmth. "That's a good one." I searched through the magazines, trying to find images that spoke to my heart. I eventually found a picture of a serene beach at sunset. This, I said, placing it on the board. It symbolizes peace. I want to find that peace between us. As we worked side by side, the atmosphere lightened. Laughter echoed through the room as we shared silly stories about our choices. It felt good to connect in this way, and for a brief moment, the shadows of our past receded. Once the board was complete, we stepped back to admire our creation. It was a collage of aspirations, hiking, travel, laughter, and love. I like this, I admitted. It feels hopeful. Jennifer beamed. This is our future, Steve. We're writing our story together. But as the days passed, I struggled to hold on to that hope. I found myself slipping back into old patterns of doubt. I noticed how my heart would race whenever she received a text, paranoia creeping in like an unwelcome guest. I wanted to trust her, yet the memory of betrayal lingered like a ghost in the corner of my mind. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I came across a photo of Mark and Jennifer's mutual friends at a gathering. My stomach twisted as I saw Jennifer laughing, her head thrown back in delight. I felt an old jealousy flare up, and I shut my laptop, frustration boiling over. "Everything okay?" Jennifer asked, walking into the room. "Yeah, just saw something," I replied, trying to sound casual. Her brow furrowed, and I could see the concern in her eyes. "What did you see?" "It's nothing," I said, my tone clipped. But inside, I was wrestling with the feeling that our friends might still be gossiping about us, that they would see her as the woman who had cheated, and I would always be the fool. "Steve, if something's bothering you, please tell me," she urged, stepping closer. I hesitated, torn between wanting to open up and the fear of reigniting old wounds. It just feels like everyone knows what happened. I don't want to be the subject of their pity or gossip. Jennifer's expression softened. "I get that. But you need to know that I'm committed to us. I don't care what others think. I'm here for you, and I want to build something new." Her words hung in the air, and I took a deep breath. "It's hard to let go, Jen. I want to trust you, but it feels like I'm walking on eggshells." "I understand," she said gently. "Maybe we can talk about it more? Find ways to navigate these feelings together?" I nodded, appreciating her willingness to engage. "Okay, let's try." That night, we sat down with our vision board, discussing our feelings openly. I spoke about my fears, my jealousy, and the heaviness of doubt that often clouded my mind. Jennifer listened intently, her hand resting on mine, grounding me. "Let's make a pact," she suggested. "Whenever one of us feels uncertain, we talk about it. No more hiding. We can't let our past dictate our future." "Deal," I agreed, feeling a weight lift slightly off my shoulders. As the days turned into weeks, we began to build this new foundation of openness. We had difficult conversations, but they felt necessary. With every discussion, I felt the walls I had built slowly crumbling, replaced by a fragile but real trust. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I noticed the way Jennifer looked at me. There was a sincerity in her gaze that made my heart swell. "I want you to know that I'm grateful for your patience," she said softly. "I know it's not easy, but I believe in us." "I believe in us too," I replied, the words feeling more genuine than ever before. "It's a work in progress, but I'm willing to put in the effort." That night, as I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The path ahead would still be rocky, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were truly moving forward together. Perhaps we were writing a new chapter, one that could lead us back to each other. The air was thick with anticipation as the months rolled by, and our new routine began to settle into something resembling normalcy. Jennifer and I had established a rhythm, one built on open communication and shared goals. Our vision board hung proudly in the living room, a constant reminder of the journey we were on together. But despite this newfound connection, I still found myself grappling with a lingering unease. One rainy Saturday afternoon, I noticed Jennifer scrolling through her phone with a slight frown. It was a stark contrast to her usual demeanor, and my heart sank as I braced myself for the conversation that was about to unfold. "What's wrong?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She sighed, her brow creasing with concern. "It's Mark. He's been texting me a lot lately about group events, trying to include me. I told him I needed space, but he keeps reaching out." The mention of Mark sent a familiar wave of anxiety coursing through me. I had worked hard to let go of my jealousy, but hearing his name still sparked a fire of insecurity. Why is he still trying to contact you? Don't you think it's a little inappropriate given everything? Jennifer met my gaze, her expression earnest. I understand how you feel, but he's part of our friend group. I don't want to cut ties with everyone because of what happened. Maybe you should, I said, my voice rising. You don't have to keep him in your life if it makes you uncomfortable. She looked taken aback. It's not that simple, Steve. I don't want to lose friendships over this, especially ones that meant a lot to us. I felt a knot tightening in my chest. It's not about losing friendships. It's about protecting what we have now. You have to understand that it's hard for me to trust him, and it makes it even harder for me to trust you. Jennifer sighed, running a hand through her hair. I'm not trying to hurt you. I want to be honest, but I can't control who reaches out to me. All I can do is promise you that I'm committed to us. Her sincerity tugged at my heart, yet the storm of emotions inside me threatened to spill over. What if I can't handle it? What if this just keeps reopening old wounds? We'll talk it through, she said, her tone gentle but firm. That's the agreement we made. No hiding, remember? I took a deep breath, feeling the walls of frustration slowly begin to crumble. You're right. I'm sorry. It's just hard. I know, she replied softly. Let's set boundaries. If he continues to text you, I'll tell him it's not okay. We need to prioritize us. Reluctantly, I nodded. Okay, let's try that. But I need you to be completely transparent about your conversations with him. Of course, she said, relief washing over her features. I want us to be on the same page. As the days passed, I tried to focus on the positive aspects of our relationship. We went for walks, cooked together, and even picked up a new hobby, photography. The shared experience brought laughter and lightness, allowing us to connect in ways I had almost forgotten. But every time my phone buzzed with a message, I felt a twinge of anxiety. I was hyper-aware of my surroundings, watching for any sign that she might be slipping back into old patterns. It was exhausting, and I realized I was still carrying the weight of our past on my shoulders. One evening, while we were preparing dinner, I decided to bring up the topic again. Hey, how's it been with Mark? Any more texts? Jennifer paused, her expression shifting. He reached out a few times, but I haven't responded. I told you I would prioritize us. Thank you, I said, a mixture of relief and guilt washing over me. I appreciate that. I just don't want to feel like I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. You shouldn't have to, she replied, her voice steady. I'm here, and I want to make this work. But it also means that I need you to trust me. Her words struck a chord, and I felt the weight of my insecurities start to shift. I know I need to work on that. It's just hard to shake off the past. Jennifer stepped closer, her hand resting on my arm. We're not the same people we were back then. We're building something new, and it's okay to be scared, but we have to face it together. That night, as we settled into bed, I found myself reflecting on her words. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but the realization that we were in this together gave me a sense of hope. I turned to Jennifer, who was already half asleep, her face peaceful. Good night, Jen, I whispered, feeling a sense of warmth spreading through me. Good night, Steve, she murmured back, her voice soft and reassuring. As I drifted off, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't in a while, faith in our ability to heal. Maybe, just maybe, we could navigate this labyrinth of emotions together, hand in hand, creating a future that was entirely our own. The following weeks passed in a flurry of activity. We were both invested in our newfound commitment to each other, and it felt like we were rediscovering pieces of ourselves that had been lost in the chaos of the past. Our photography hobby took off. We spent weekends exploring local parks and urban landscapes, capturing moments that felt vibrant and full of life. Each click of the shutter felt like a step forward, a way to freeze time and savor the present. Yet, even in this bloom of creativity, the shadows of doubt occasionally crept back in. I would catch myself scrolling through social media, checking on Jennifer's interactions. I knew it was unhealthy, but the urge was hard to resist. I told myself I was just being cautious, but deep down, I recognized it was rooted in my insecurities. One afternoon, while we were out on a photo shoot, I noticed a text pop up on Jennifer's phone. She glanced at it quickly, her expression changing from joy to something more serious. My heart sank. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "It was just Laura, asking about our plans for the weekend," she replied, her voice steady. "Just Laura?" I pressed, unable to shake the knot forming in my stomach. "Yeah," she said, turning her phone face down on the picnic blanket. "We can talk about it later. Right now, let's focus on the sunset." But the sunset didn't hold my attention, as it usually did. I was consumed by thoughts of that text, imagining what else could be going on behind the scenes. As we snapped pictures, I struggled to immerse myself in the moment, my mind racing with questions. Later that evening, as we sat down to review our photos, I couldn't hold back any longer. "You know, it's hard for me to shake off this feeling that I'm not enough. I keep thinking about how you might still be close to Mark or how you interact with our friends." Jennifer looked up from the photos, her expression serious. "Steve, I've told you how committed I am to us. I'm trying to build trust here. I know, but sometimes it feels like I'm fighting against shadows," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want to trust you, but when you get texts from friends, my mind jumps to the worst-case scenario." "Talk to me about it," she said gently. "What can I do to help you feel more secure?" "Maybe, if you could share your conversations with me or at least tell me when something significant comes you up," I suggested, feeling vulnerable as I said it. "I can do that," she agreed, her tone soothing. "But you also have to promise to trust me. I don't want to live under a microscope. I need space to rebuild my friendships too." I nodded, recognizing the validity of her point. It was a balancing act, one where we both had to give and take. "Okay, I'll try, but it's going to take time." "Time is what we have," she replied, her smile returning. "Let's focus on what's ahead instead of what's behind us." That night, we fell asleep entwined, the weight of our conversation lingering in the air. I felt a flicker of hope mixed with lingering doubts, but I was determined to push through. I had to trust that we were on the right path. The next weekend, we joined Laura and a few other friends for a hike. I was apprehensive, but I reminded myself that I needed to trust Jennifer. As we arrived at the trailhead, the sun shone brightly, casting a golden hue on everything around us. The hike was invigorating, laughter echoing through the trees as we made our way up the trail. I tried to let go of my worries, focusing instead on the beauty of nature and the joy of being with friends. But as we reached the summit, I caught a glimpse of Mark in the group, his presence sending a wave of unease through me. "Hey, look at this view," Jennifer exclaimed, stepping to the edge of the overlook. I watched as she took in the breathtaking panorama, her face lighting up with excitement. I couldn't help but admire her spirit, but the sight of Mark nearby made my heart race. "Let's get a group photo," Laura suggested, her camera in hand. As we gathered for the picture, I felt the tension building in my chest. Mark stood close to Jennifer, and I couldn't shake the feeling of jealousy creeping back in. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. We were all friends. I had to keep that perspective. The camera clicked, capturing the moment. Everyone laughed, but I felt a disconnect. In that instant, I realized that I needed to confront my feelings, not just for Jennifer's sake, but for my own well-being. After the hike, as we made our way back to the cars, I pulled Jennifer aside. "Can we talk for a minute?" "Sure, what's on your mind?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "I just want you to know that I'm working on my trust issues, but seeing you with Mark today stirred up a lot of insecurities for me," I admitted. "I don't want to feel like this, but I need to address it." Jennifer nodded, her expression understanding. "I appreciate your honesty. I can see why that would be hard. But I want you to know that I'm here for you. My heart is with you, not him." "I need to hear that more often," I confessed, feeling a wave of vulnerability wash over me. "Then I'll make it a point to remind you," she replied, her eyes softening. "We're in this together, remember?" As we drove home that evening, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, I felt a weight lift slightly. It wasn't a complete fix, but acknowledging my feelings was a step toward healing. Maybe, just maybe, we could move beyond the shadows of our pasts and find a brighter future together. As the weeks turned into months, Jennifer and I settled into a routine that felt both familiar and new. We had created a comfortable space where honesty reigned, and yet, I still felt the undercurrents of anxiety swirling within me. Despite our progress, every now and then, I found myself spiraling into insecurity, especially when it came to Mark. One evening, while we were curled up on the couch watching a movie, I felt my phone buzz. It was a message from Laura, suggesting a get-together with a few friends. My heart raced when I noticed Mark's name among the invitees. I hesitated, torn between wanting to keep my cool and the urge to retreat into jealousy. "Everything okay?" Jennifer asked, glancing over at me. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a text from Laura about this weekend." "Are we going?" she asked, her eyes bright with anticipation. "Maybe," I replied, the word hanging heavy in the air. I saw Mark's name on the list." Her expression shifted slightly, and I could sense her understanding. "I get it. You're uncomfortable with him being around, especially after everything. I don't want to ruin your time with friends, but it's hard for me to be around him," I admitted, frustration bubbling up. "It's like I can't escape this feeling that I'm competing with a ghost." Jennifer reached out, taking my hand. "You're not competing with anyone. I chose you, and I want you to know that. But I also want to support my friendships." "Then what do we do?" I asked, the knot in my stomach tightening. "Let's talk about it," she said firmly. "If we go, we can create our own space. We'll stick together, and if you feel uncomfortable, we can leave." I nodded, appreciating her willingness to accommodate my feelings. "Okay, let's give it a try." When the weekend rolled around, I was filled with a mix of excitement and dread. As we arrived at Laura's house, the familiar laughter and chatter greeted us, momentarily distracting me from my apprehensions. I watched as friends mingled, and I was determined to keep my composure. Jennifer and I found a spot together, and I focused on the conversations around us. But my unease resurfaced as I spotted Mark across the room, effortlessly charming those around him. I could feel my heart rate quicken, and I instinctively tightened my grip on Jennifer's hand. "Hey, you all right?" she asked, noticing my tension. "Yeah, just taking it all in," I replied, trying to maintain a facade of calm. As the evening progressed, I realized that Jennifer was making an effort to include me in conversations. She laughed at my jokes and made sure I felt connected. I appreciated her support, but the moment Mark approached our group, my stomach dropped. "Hey, you two," Mark said, flashing a grin. "Glad you could make it." "Thanks," I replied, my voice strained. Jennifer was quick to engage, chatting easily with him while I felt myself retreating inward. The weight of his presence felt like a cloud overshadowing my efforts to enjoy the evening. "Did you guys go hiking recently?" Mark asked, his gaze shifting between us. "Yeah, we did," Jennifer said enthusiastically. "It was amazing. The views were incredible." "Sounds fun. We should all go together sometime," Mark suggested, a hint of casualness that irked me. "I don't know," I said, my voice coming out sharper than intended. "I think it's better to keep some distance for now." Mark raised an eyebrow, his smile faltering for a moment. "Sure, no problem. Just thought it could be a good way to hang out." Jennifer looked between us, her expression tense. "Let's just focus on enjoying tonight. We're here to have fun." As the night wore on, I found myself retreating to the corner of the room, nursing my drink while I watched the dynamics unfold. Jennifer laughed and chatted with others, her smile lighting up the space. Yet, I felt like a spectator in my own life, weighed down by insecurity. Eventually, Laura approached me. "Hey Steve, you okay? You've been kinda quiet." "Yeah, just processing," I admitted. She glanced toward Jennifer and Mark, her expression thoughtful. "I can see how that might be hard for you. Just know that you're not alone in feeling that way. It's tough when someone from the past resurfaces." I appreciated her understanding. "Thanks, Laura. It helps to hear that." After a while, I caught Jennifer's eye, and she smiled at me, a warmth spreading through me. It reminded me of what we were working towards together. I had to find a way to navigate this discomfort, not just for my sake, but for ours. Later in the evening, Jennifer found me in the corner. "Hey, can we talk?" "Of course," I replied, my heart racing. We stepped outside onto the porch, where the cool night air brushed against our skin. "I don't want you to feel uncomfortable, but I also want to keep things light with my friends," she said, concern etched on her face. "I know, I'm trying," I said, frustration creeping back in. "But I can't help but feel that his presence is like a shadow looming over us." Jennifer took a deep breath. Let's not let him dictate our happiness. We're here together, and that's what matters. In that moment, I realized how much I needed to hear her reassurance. You're right. I just need to trust that we're stronger than this. She smiled, and I felt the tension ease between us. We'll face it together, I promise. As we returned to the gathering, I held her hand tightly, reminding myself of our commitment. I was determined to break free from the chains of jealousy and embrace the present, one step at a time. Together, we could turn the page and write a new story, one where shadows no longer held sway over our love. The following weeks felt like a delicate dance. With each passing day, I made a conscious effort to let go of my insecurities, especially regarding Mark. Jennifer and I had established a stronger bond, one built on trust and communication. Still, the memories of betrayal lingered in my mind, making it hard to fully relax. One Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow in our bedroom. I turned to find Jennifer still asleep, her hair splayed across the pillow, a peaceful look on her face. I couldn't help but smile, feeling grateful for the connection we were nurturing. After I made coffee, I decided to surprise her with breakfast in bed. As I prepared the plates, I reflected on how far we'd come. Despite the occasional doubts, I felt hopeful. I set everything on a tray and gently shook her awake. "Good morning, sleepyhead," I said, placing the tray beside her. She stirred, blinking at the sight of pancakes and fresh fruit. "Wow, you're the best," she said, a wide smile breaking across her face. "I figured you deserved a treat," I replied, sitting beside her. As she dug into the food, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. We chatted about our plans for the day, deciding to go for a hike followed by a picnic. The thought of being in nature together excited me, and I loved that we were creating new memories. Later that afternoon, we hit the trails, laughter echoing as we hiked through the trees. We took pictures of wildflowers and admired the views, feeling the warmth of the sun on our skin. It was moments like these that reminded me of the joy we could share, free from the past. But as we reached a clearing, I spotted a familiar figure in the distance. Mark was on the same trail, hiking with a group. My heart sank, and I felt the familiar stirrings of anxiety bubble up. "Do you want to keep going?" Jennifer asked, noticing my sudden change in demeanor. I hesitated, glancing at her. "I don't know. I just saw Mark." She sighed, her expression softening. "We can turn around if you'd prefer. I want you to feel comfortable." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I need to confront this. Let's keep going." As we approached, I could feel my heart pounding. Mark turned, a surprised look crossing his face. "Hey, didn't expect to see you guys out here." "Hey," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just enjoying the day." Jennifer stepped closer to me, her presence grounding. "We were just taking in the views. How's it going with your group?" "It's good. Just a little hiking before the weather changes," he said, casual as ever. I watched him interact with his friends, their laughter echoing through the trees. It was disarming, the ease with which he moved through the crowd. I felt a wave of insecurity crash over me, but I took a deep breath, reminding myself of my commitment to Jennifer. "Nice to see you," I said, trying to sound genuine. "Yeah, you too," Mark replied before turning back to his group. As we continued our hike, I felt a mixture of pride and tension. "I did it," I said, more to reassure myself. "I didn't let him affect me." Jennifer smiled, squeezing my hand. "You faced it head on. I'm proud of you." "Thanks. I just need to keep working on this," I admitted, feeling a weight lift slightly. Later, we found a picturesque spot to spread our picnic blanket. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over everything. We shared our favorite snacks, laughter bubbling between us as we exchanged stories and jokes. "I love moments like this," Jennifer said, her eyes sparkling. "Just you and me." "Me too," I replied, my heart swelling. "It feels good to be here, together." As we sat in the fading light, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a turning point. The shadows of the past were still there, but they didn't have to define us. We were building something stronger, a bond forged in honesty and commitment. On the way back, we walked hand in hand, the warmth of the day lingering. I felt more at ease, a sense of hope blossoming within me. I realized that while Mark's presence still stirred feelings, it didn't have to control our narrative. That night, as we lay in bed, I turned to Jennifer. "Today was amazing. Thank you for being by my side. Always," she replied, her eyes soft. "We're in this together, remember?" I nodded, feeling a sense of certainty settle within me. We had both come a long way, and while the road ahead might have its challenges, I was ready to face them. Together, we could turn the page, stepping into a future that was entirely ours, where love and trust could flourish unimpeded by the past. As the leaves began to change colors and fall, the air turned crisp, signaling the arrival of autumn. Jennifer and I decided to embrace the season by planning a weekend getaway to a cozy cabin in the mountains. It felt like the perfect opportunity to deepen our connection and enjoy some quality time together, free from distractions. The drive to the cabin was filled with laughter and music, the landscape transforming into a tapestry of oranges, yellows, and reds. I relished the feeling of excitement building between us, and as we arrived, the cabin stood nestled among the trees, inviting us to explore. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and welcoming, with a fireplace ready to be lit. We unloaded our bags, and I set to work making a fire while Jennifer prepared some snacks. As the flames crackled to life, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was a place where we could escape from the complications of our lives and focus on each other. That evening, we settled in front of the fire, sharing stories and dreams. The glow of the flames cast flickering shadows around us, creating an intimate ambiance. I looked into Jennifer's eyes and saw warmth and love reflected back. It was a moment I wanted to hold on to forever. "Do you remember our first date?" she asked, a playful smile on her lips. "How could I forget?" I replied, chuckling. "You spilled wine all over yourself." "Hey, I was nervous." She laughed, and I couldn't help but join her. As we reminisced, I felt the bonds of our past strengthen, reminding me of why I fell in love with her. The evening wore on, and eventually, we moved to the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot cocoa. I felt incredibly lucky to have her by my side. The next day, we ventured out to explore the nearby trails. The mountains were stunning, draped in fall foliage, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and earth. We hiked hand in hand, soaking in the beauty around us. Jennifer's laughter echoed through the woods, and for the first time in a long while, I felt completely at ease. As we reached a lookout point, the view took my breath away. The valley sprawled out below us, painted with vibrant colors, and the horizon stretched endlessly. I turned to Jennifer, captivated by the sight of her framed against the landscape. "Let's take a picture," I suggested, wanting to capture the moment. We set up the camera on a nearby rock and posed together, arms around each other, smiles wide. The click of the shutter captured not just an image, but the essence of our journey, a new beginning built on trust and love. After the hike, we returned to the cabin, exhausted but happy. I decided to prepare dinner while Jennifer set up a cozy spot outside to watch the stars. As I cooked, I reflected on how far we had come. Each step we took together felt like a victory over the shadows of the past. Later, we sat under a blanket of stars, the sky shimmering above us. The world felt quiet and still, and I couldn't help but share my thoughts. "You know, this feels perfect. Like we've carved out our own little paradise." Jennifer smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "It really does. I'm so grateful we took this trip." As we talked, I could sense an unspoken understanding between us. The fear of the past lingered in the back of my mind, but it was fading, overshadowed by the love we were building. I realized that while the past would always be a part of our story, it didn't have to dictate our future. The next morning, I woke up early to make breakfast. As the aroma of pancakes wafted through the cabin, I felt a surge of joy. I wanted to create beautiful moments for us, ones that would anchor our relationship. When Jennifer finally emerged, her hair tousled and eyes sleepy, she smiled at the sight of the table set for breakfast. "You're spoiling me," she said, her eyes sparkling. "Just returning the favor," I replied, feeling my heart swell. Over breakfast, we discussed our hopes and dreams for the future. Jennifer talked about her aspirations in photography, and I shared my desire to build a life filled with adventure. We painted vivid pictures of what we wanted, and I felt more connected to her than ever. As we packed up to leave, I realized how transformative this trip had been. The cabin wasn't just a getaway. It had become a sanctuary where we faced our fears and emerged stronger together. Driving back home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. While shadows from the past might still whisper in the corners of my mind, I was ready to embrace the light that Jennifer brought into my life. We were on a journey, hand in hand, and I was excited to see where it would lead us next. As the days turned into weeks, the vibrant autumn leaves fell and winter crept in, bringing a chill to the air. Despite the cold, my heart felt warm, buoyed by the memories of our cabin getaway. Jennifer and I had grown closer, the foundation of trust we were building feeling more solid with each passing day. One evening, as we settled on the couch with hot drinks, I noticed Jennifer was unusually quiet. Her brows were furrowed and she kept glancing at her phone. Concern crept into my chest. "Everything okay?" I asked, setting my mug down. She sighed, placing her phone face down on the table. "I got a message from Mark. He wants to catch up." The moment those words left her mouth, a cold wave washed over me. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but the tension in my chest was palpable. "What did you say?" I managed to ask, my voice steadier than I felt. "I haven't responded yet," she said, looking at me earnestly. "I wanted to talk to you first." I swallowed hard, weighing my words. "What do you think? Do you want to meet him?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Part of me feels like it could be good to clear the air. But I don't want to hurt you." The truth was, my instincts screamed at me. Mark was still the ghost in the back of my mind, a reminder of a painful chapter in our story. "If you think it's best for you, then you should do it," I said, trying to sound supportive even as doubt gnawed at me. Jennifer looked down, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. "I just don't want to put you through this again. You've been so amazing since everything happened." "I appreciate that," I replied, reaching for her hand. "But if you feel it's something you need to do, I won't stop you." We fell into silence, the weight of the decision hanging in the air like a thick fog. I could sense her internal struggle, and I wanted to be the supportive partner she deserved, but a part of me felt betrayed. It was difficult to separate my insecurities from her need for closure. After a long pause, she looked up, determination in her eyes. "I want you to know that whatever happens, my priority is us. I'm committed to this relationship." I nodded, touched by her reassurance. "I know, it's just hard for me to shake off the past sometimes." "I understand, but let's talk about this more. If you're uncomfortable with me meeting him, I'll respect that," she said, her voice steady. I took a deep breath, considering her words. "Maybe we should talk to each other about it openly, so we can both feel secure. Just promise me you'll be honest with me about everything." "I promise," she said softly. "I'll think about it tonight and let you know what I decide." As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in my gut. I wanted to trust Jennifer, but the shadow of Mark lingered, making it hard to breathe. I closed my eyes, trying to push the thoughts away, but they lingered like a ghost. The following day, Jennifer sent me a text. "I've decided not to meet with Mark. I want to focus on us." Relief flooded through me, but I didn't want to express it too enthusiastically. "Are you sure?" I replied. "It's totally your decision." "I'm sure," she texted back. "I don't want to jeopardize what we have. You're my priority." That evening, we went for a walk in the park, the air crisp and refreshing. I felt lighter, but the conversation we had still hung between us like an unresolved thread. "I appreciate your decision," I said, glancing at her, "but I also want you to feel free to pursue what you need. If you change your mind, I won't hold it against you." Jennifer smiled softly, her breath visible in the cold air. "I know, and that means a lot. I want you to feel secure in our relationship. You deserve that." As we walked, I felt a mix of gratitude and caution. I wanted to trust her, and I believed she was genuinely committed to our future. But the past had left its scars, and I needed to acknowledge that healing was a process, not a destination. Over the next few weeks, we continued to strengthen our bond. We decorated for the upcoming holidays, filled the apartment with twinkling lights, and created a cozy atmosphere that felt like home. We laughed as we struggled to hang ornaments on the tree, and I found joy in our shared traditions. Yet, the specter of Mark still hovered in the background. I caught myself glancing at my phone, half expecting a message, but it never came. I wondered if Jennifer had truly moved on or if the temptation still lingered. One evening, as we cuddled on the couch, I finally spoke up. "Do you ever think about him?" Jennifer turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Sometimes, but not in a way that makes me want to go back. I think about the mistakes and how far we've come." I nodded, feeling a weight lift. "I guess I'm just trying to understand where we stand. I don't want to live in fear of the past." "You don't have to," she said, her eyes earnest. "I'm here, with you. Every step we take is a choice to move forward." Those words resonated deeply within me. I took a deep breath, realizing that this journey was about progress, not perfection. The past would always be a part of us, but it didn't have to define our future. As we sat together, wrapped in each other's warmth, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were navigating this path together, and while shadows might still linger, the light of our love was shining brighter than ever. Together, we would face whatever challenges lay ahead, one step at a time. As winter settled in, the days grew shorter and colder, wrapping us in a blanket of stillness. The holiday season approached, and with it came a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Jennifer and I decided to spend Christmas with my family, a significant step in solidifying our relationship. I wanted her to feel welcomed and included, but I also felt the pressure of my family's expectations. The night before our departure, we decorated the tree, ornaments reflecting the warm glow of the lights. "This feels so festive," Jennifer said, hanging a delicate glass ornament. "I love how cozy it is here." "It really is," I replied, watching her as she immersed herself in the moment. I admired her ability to bring joy into our home, and I hoped my family would appreciate her just as much. The drive to my parents' house was filled with holiday music and laughter, but beneath the surface I felt an undercurrent of anxiety. What if my family compared her to past relationships? What if they brought up Mark? I tried to shake off the thoughts, reminding myself that this was about celebrating love and new beginnings. When we arrived, my family greeted us with warmth and enthusiasm. Jennifer immediately connected with my mother, who enveloped her in a hug. "It's so wonderful to finally meet you," Mom exclaimed, beaming. "Thank you. I've heard so much about you," Jennifer replied, her smile radiant. As the evening progressed, I watched Jennifer charm everyone around her, sharing stories and laughter. My heart swelled with pride, and I felt a sense of relief as I noticed my family embracing her without hesitation. But as we settled in for dinner, the conversation shifted to relationships, and I felt a familiar knot form in my stomach. "So, tell us how you two met," my dad said, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. I glanced at Jennifer, who was smiling confidently. "We met through mutual friends," she began. "It was a bit chaotic at first, but we hit it off." "Chaos is part of the fun," my younger sister chimed in, grinning. "Right?" Everyone laughed, but my heart raced. I could sense my dad's curiosity, the questions lurking beneath the surface. "And how are things going?" he pressed gently, looking between us. I held my breath, waiting for Jennifer's response. "Things are going really well," she said, her voice steady. "We've been working on building a strong foundation together." I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Jennifer was open and honest, skillfully navigating the conversation. But my relief was short-lived when my mother added, "You know, dear, it's important to communicate openly. Relationships can be complicated." A tension hung in the air, and I could feel my heart pounding. I shot a quick glance at Jennifer, hoping she wouldn't sense my discomfort. "We're aware," I said, trying to redirect the conversation. "We've learned a lot through our experiences." As the dinner continued, I noticed my dad casting sideways glances at me, and I felt the urge to reassure him. "We're happy," I finally said, looking directly at him. "We're both committed to making this work." "Good to hear," he replied, but I could tell he wasn't entirely convinced. After dinner, we gathered around the fireplace, hot cocoa in hand. The ambiance was warm and festive, but my mind raced. I felt the weight of expectations pressing down, and I worried about the conversation we'd had with Jennifer about Mark. I didn't want that shadow to resurface during this special time. As we exchanged gifts, Jennifer's enthusiasm was infectious. She lit up as she unwrapped presents, her laughter ringing through the room. I watched her, feeling the warmth of her joy seep into my heart. This was the woman I wanted in my life, the one who made everything feel right. Later that night, as we settled into bed, I turned to her. "You did great tonight," I said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm proud of you." "Thanks," she replied softly, her eyes sparkling in the dim light. "I was nervous, but it felt good to connect with your family." I hesitated, unsure if I should bring it up. "Did you feel any pressure?" "A little," she admitted, her gaze steady. "But I think we handled it well. We're building our own story, right?" I nodded, feeling reassured. "Yeah, we are. Just promise me if anything feels off, we'll talk about it." "Always," she said, leaning in for a kiss. As I wrapped my arms around her, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The past was still there, but it was fading into the background, overshadowed by the love we were nurturing. I was determined to focus on us, our journey, and the beautiful memories we were creating together. The next day, we spent time with my family, laughter echoing through the house as we played games and shared stories. The anxiety that had gripped me began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of belonging. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but in that moment, surrounded by love, I felt hopeful for the future. As we drove back home, I glanced over at Jennifer, her hair tousled by the wind. "I'm so glad we did this," I said, smiling. "You really fit in with my family." "I felt it," she replied, her smile radiant. "It was wonderful." With every mile that passed, I realized how important it was to cherish these moments. Together, we were building a life, layer by layer, and I felt more committed than ever to our shared path. We were turning the page on a new chapter, ready to face whatever lay ahead, together. The new year arrived with a flurry of snowflakes, transforming the world outside into a winter wonderland. As we welcomed January, I felt a renewed sense of hope and possibility. Jennifer and I decided to spend the first weekend of the year at a nearby ski resort, excited to embrace the season and create new memories together. On the drive there, we laughed and sang along to our favorite songs, the anticipation bubbling between us. The landscape transformed into a picturesque scene, white-capped mountains towering against the clear blue sky. "I can't wait to hit the slopes," Jennifer exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Just promise me you'll take it easy," I replied, teasing her. "We don't need any injuries on our first trip of the year." "Please, I'll be fine," she laughed, nudging my shoulder playfully. "I've been practicing." When we arrived, the resort buzzed with energy. Families were bundled up, children giggling as they tumbled into the snow. We checked into our cozy cabin, its rustic charm inviting us in. After unpacking, we donned our winter gear and headed out, ready to tackle the slopes. As we made our way to the ski lifts, I felt a familiar thrill in the pit of my stomach. Skiing was something I loved, but I wanted to make sure Jennifer felt comfortable too. "Do you want to start on the beginner hill?" I asked, concerned but hopeful. She grinned. "Nah, let's do something a little more challenging. I'm ready for the intermediate slopes." I admired her determination, but a flicker of worry nagged at me. Still, I pushed it aside and agreed. After all, this was about fun and adventure together. We made our way to the lift, and soon we were soaring up the mountainside, the breathtaking view stretching out before us. Once at the top, we took a moment to soak in the scenery. The world below was a patchwork of white, and I felt a surge of gratitude for this moment. "Ready?" I asked, glancing at her. "Always," she replied, her excitement infectious. As we descended, the rush of adrenaline took over. We carved through the snow, laughter echoing off the trees. Jennifer's confidence shone through, and I was amazed by how quickly she adapted. I couldn't remember the last time I felt this carefree. After several runs, we decided to take a break. We found a quaint little lodge where we could warm up with hot chocolate. Sitting by the fireplace, I watched as she melted into the cozy atmosphere, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Today has been incredible," I said, savoring the moment. "I'm so glad we came." "Me too," she replied, her smile radiant. "I feel like we're really starting the year off right." As we sipped our drinks, the conversation turned to our goals for the year ahead. "What do you want to focus on this year?" I asked, genuinely curious. Jennifer leaned back, thoughtful. "I want to keep pushing myself, both personally and professionally. I've been thinking about taking a photography course to improve my skills." "That sounds amazing. You have such an eye for detail," I encouraged, picturing her behind the camera, capturing the world in her unique way. "What about you?" she asked, her eyes bright. "Any goals for this year?" "I want to work on my music more," I admitted. "I've always been passionate about it, but I've let life get in the way. I want to make more time for creativity." Her expression turned serious, and she nodded. "That's important. We should both commit to what we love." We spent the rest of the evening discussing our dreams, the fire crackling softly as the night deepened around us. I felt a warmth in my chest, realizing how much our relationship had evolved. We were not just partners, we were each other's biggest supporters. Later, as we returned to our cabin, the moonlight illuminated the fresh snow, casting a magical glow over the landscape. I took Jennifer's hand, and we walked slowly, enjoying the serene beauty around us. "I love these moments," I said softly, looking at her. "Me too," she replied, squeezing my hand. "It feels like we're exactly where we're supposed to be." As we settled into bed that night, I reflected on how far we'd come. The challenges of the past were still present in our minds, but they felt more like distant echoes than looming shadows. Together, we were creating a new story, one filled with love, laughter, and adventure. The next day, we hit the slopes again, our confidence soaring. We spent hours racing down the mountains, pushing each other to try new techniques and occasionally wiping out in fits of laughter. Each moment felt like a small victory, solidifying the bond we were building. By the time we returned home, my heart was full. We had embraced the season, faced our fears, and emerged stronger together. As we unpacked, I couldn't help but smile at the memories we had created. The new year was already shaping up to be extraordinary, and I was excited to see where our journey would take us next. Together, we were unstoppable, ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. As January melted into February, the world outside transformed into a frosty canvas, but inside, warmth filled our hearts. Jennifer and I found ourselves swept up in the rhythm of life together, but the lingering echoes of the past still whispered in the corners of my mind. I was determined to push through those shadows, and one evening, while sipping wine by the fire, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. "Can we talk about Mark?" I asked, my heart racing as I broke the comfortable silence. Jennifer looked up, her expression shifting from relaxed to serious. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "I just want to make sure we're both on the same page," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I know we've made progress, but sometimes I feel like I'm still carrying that weight." She nodded, her brow furrowing in thought. "I understand. I think about it too. I don't want that to linger between us. I appreciate that. I guess I just want reassurance that you're fully committed to us," I admitted, vulnerability creeping in. "Trust me, I am," she said firmly, her voice steady. "I want you to know that everything I do is to build our future together." Relief washed over me, but I needed to delve deeper. "What about your relationship with Mark? Do you think about him? How do you feel about it now?" Jennifer sighed, looking into the fire. "Sometimes I think about the mistakes I made, but I don't want to dwell on them. My focus is on the present and what we're building." "Good," I replied, feeling a bit lighter. "I just want us to be transparent with each other. If there's ever anything you need to discuss, I'm here. I promise I'll always be honest with you," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "You're my priority, and I'm grateful for what we have." That night, I felt a sense of peace settle in. We had navigated a tricky conversation, and instead of drifting apart, we had drawn closer. I realized that trust was a continuous journey, and both of us were willing to walk that path together. As February rolled on, we embraced the season with open hearts. We celebrated Valentine's Day in our own unique way, opting for a cozy dinner at home rather than a crowded restaurant. I prepared a candlelit meal, and Jennifer surprised me with a handmade gift, an album filled with memories from our time together. "This is incredible," I said, flipping through the pages filled with photos and little notes. "You've captured so much of our journey. I wanted to remind us of everything we've been through and how far we've come," she said, her eyes shining. That evening, we shared our hopes and dreams for the future, discussing everything from travel plans to career aspirations. Each conversation deepened our bond, and I felt more secure in our relationship. As the weeks passed, we found ourselves growing into a rhythm. Weekends were filled with spontaneous adventures, hiking in the nearby woods, trying out new recipes, and exploring local cafes. We even started a small garden on our balcony, planting herbs and flowers that symbolized our growth together. But just as I felt we were thriving, an unexpected challenge arose. One evening, Jennifer received a text from Mark, asking if they could meet for closure. I felt the air leave my lungs as I watched her read it, uncertainty flickering across her face. "I don't know how to handle this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced. "What are you thinking?" "I'm torn. Part of me feels it could help, but another part worries it might open old wounds," she admitted. I took a deep breath, weighing my own emotions. "I understand why you'd want closure, but I'm also concerned. It's hard for me to think about you meeting him." Jennifer nodded, her eyes filled with conflict. "I don't want to hurt you, but I also don't want to leave things unresolved. Maybe we should talk through it together," I suggested. "What do you really want?" "I want to be honest with myself and with you," she said. "If meeting him helps me find peace, then maybe I need to do it. But I don't want it to affect us." I felt a mix of emotions, fear, anger, and understanding. "If you feel it's something you need to do, I won't stop you. But I need you to promise me that we'll keep communicating through it." "Absolutely," she replied, her voice steady. "I'll keep you in the loop every step of the way." That night I wrestled with my thoughts. I wanted to support Jennifer, but I also feared the implications of her meeting with Mark. The shadows of the past loomed larger than ever, but I reminded myself that trust is built in moments like these. As she fell asleep beside me, I realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we had each other, and that was worth fighting for. Together we would navigate this storm, building an even stronger foundation for our love. I just hoped the journey wouldn't take us too far from where we had finally found peace. The day of Jennifer's meeting with Mark arrived, and the air felt thick with tension. I had spent the morning trying to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting to the conversation we'd had. Part of me wanted to support her decision. Another part felt a knot tightening in my stomach. I couldn't shake the fear of what this meeting might bring. When she finally left, I watched her go with a mix of anxiety and resolve. "I'll be back soon," she assured me, squeezing my hand. I nodded, trying to mask the unease churning inside me. As the hours stretched on, I tried to distract myself with music and projects around the house, but every time my phone buzzed, my heart leaped. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I received a text from her. "Just finished. I'm on my way home. Can we talk?" My stomach twisted. I quickly replied, "Of course. I'm here." When she walked through the door, I could see the heaviness in her eyes. "How did it go?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She took a deep breath, her shoulders sagging slightly. "It was emotional. We talked about everything, our past, our mistakes, and what went wrong. I think I got some closure." "Are you okay?" I asked, moving closer, wanting to comfort her. "I think so," she replied, her voice shaky. "But it was hard. I realized how much I've changed since then. I don't want to go back to that place." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but I knew this was just the beginning. "What do you need from me right now?" "I need you to listen," she said, tears pooling in her eyes. "I want to tell you everything." We settled onto the couch, and she recounted the meeting with Mark. She described their conversation, how he had expressed his regrets and tried to rekindle a sense of the past. But Jennifer had stood firm, emphasizing how much she valued our relationship and the life we were building together. "I was honest with him," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I told him that I've moved on and that he doesn't have a place in my life anymore. It felt freeing, but also painful. I didn't realize how much I still needed to say." As she spoke, I felt pride swell in my chest. "You handled that beautifully," I said, admiration in my tone. "I'm proud of you for standing your ground." "Thanks," she replied, wiping away a tear. "But I also felt guilty. I didn't want to hurt him, even after everything." "That's natural," I said gently. "But you did what was best for you. You're allowed to prioritize your happiness." She nodded, and I could see the weight begin to lift from her shoulders. "I want us to keep moving forward. I don't want anything from my past to come between us." "Then let's do that," I replied, taking her hands in mine. "We can focus on building our future together. You've shown so much strength today." Jennifer smiled, a glimmer of hope returning to her eyes. "I'm ready for that. I don't want to look back anymore." As the night wore on, We talked late into the evening, discussing our hopes and dreams without the shadow of doubt hanging over us. We shared laughter and warmth, reaffirming the love that had blossomed between us. I felt a renewed sense of commitment to her, ready to face whatever challenges might arise. The next few weeks passed in a flurry of activity, and we immersed ourselves in our routines. We spent weekends exploring new hiking trails, trying out different recipes, and diving deeper into our shared interests. Each moment together felt like a building block in the foundation of our relationship. But just as things began to feel stable, an unexpected storm loomed on the horizon. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, Jennifer received another message, this time from Mark. I felt my heart drop as she opened it. "What does he want now?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. "He wants to meet again," she replied, her voice shaky. "He said he needs to talk about something important." I could see the concern etched on her face. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," she admitted, biting her lip. "Part of me wants to hear him out, but I'm scared it'll pull me back into old feelings." "Is this something you feel you have to do?" I asked carefully. "Because if it is, I'll support you, but I also need to know you're doing it for the right reasons." "I think I should at least hear him out," she said, taking a deep breath. "But I promise I won't lose sight of us." I took her hands, grounding myself in the moment. "Whatever you decide, I'll be right here with you. Just promise me you'll keep communicating." "I promise," she said, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. As she prepared to meet Mark again, I felt the familiar knot in my stomach return, but I also felt a sense of determination. We would face this together, no matter what happened. Trusting in each other would be our ultimate strength, and I was ready to fight for our love.